The collision between power and love often produces breakthrough and stuckness. And so the more general question is, what does it take to move forward on such complex social challenges? When I look back on the past 20 years of work, I can now see that I've encountered this collision between power and love many times. The way I got started in this work was in 1991. I was an employee of the Strategic Planning Department of Royal Dutch Shell, the oil company in London. Royal Dutch Shell has a particular approach to strategic planning called scenario planning. And one day in 1991, we received this unexpected phone call from an activist in South Africa who was associated with Nelson Mandela's African National Congress. And Mandela had just been released from prison, but the negotiations had just started. They wouldn't conclude until 1994, and the opposition in South Africa wanted to use the Shell scenario planning methodology to think about think about their strategy for the transition away from apartheid. And they wanted to know if Shell could send somebody to provide methodological advice to the team. And as I was the youngest and most expendable member of the department, I was dispatched. And this is how I came in September 1991 to facilitate an activity that became known as the Montfleur Scenario Exercise. Montfleur was the name of the conference center outside of Cape Town. And what was most remarkable about that exercise is I discovered that the team that had been put together was not just people from the African National Congress, but people from all the opposition movements, from the trade unions, from community groups, academics, business people, establishment figures, and even members of the white minority government, the National Party. And it turned out that this way of working on things, this way of trying to deal with the challenge of the time, this idea that you would bring together all the stakeholders in the situation to talk about what's going on and what should we do was quite common in South Africa at the time. The general name of this way of working was the forum method. And there was a joke that people used to tell in South Africa at the time that faced with our unbelievably complex challenges that really nobody thinks we can resolve peacefully, this terrible apartheid system, we really have actually two options. There's a practical option and then there's a miraculous option. The practical option would be that right now we get out of our chairs and down on our knees and we pray for a band of angels to come down and solve this problem for us. That's the practical option. The miraculous option is that we continue to talk to one another and we find a way forward together. To the great surprise of international community, to the great surprise of South Africans themselves, they succeeded in implementing the practical option with actually no external assistance at all. It was entirely a homegrown effort. And what I learned from this experience is it is possible to make progress on even the most complex social challenges. There is an important part of this story, a huge part of this story, that's about power. That's about a history of migration, of slavery, colonialism, apartheid, armed resistance, negotiation. In other words, a huge part of the story that's about what this group wants and what that group wants and how they're gonna make progress. At the same time, it is clear to me that there is an important part of the South African story which is about love. And the two emblematic figures of the transition, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and President Nelson Mandela, are known for their capacity to bring together different parts, the different parts that had been separated. The word apartheid in Afrikaans simply means apartness. When I thought about it more, I realized that exactly the same collision of power and love that I'd seen in Copenhagen, that I'd seen in South Africa, I'd also seen in all the organizations that I'd been part of, either consulting to, business, government, civil society organizations, in Shell, in Rios itself. That on the one hand, you have this power drive, this drive of every individual, every unit, every department to push its ideas, its initiatives, to just try to get on with doing its job. And at the same time, this love drive, this friendship, this teammateship, this common purpose to move things forward together. There's something going on here which, if we squint, we can see at the global level, at the national level, at the organizational level, at the individual level. I tried to understand what's this phenomena that I've observed with my own eyes at these different levels. And my understanding of this phenomena is that what we're talking about are two basic universal human drives: power and love. The definitions I'm using here, to now be very specific, come from a man named Paul Tillich. I think we can really understand a lot of what we're seeing in the world, what we're trying to deal with as activists, as change agents, with his understandings of power and love. Tillich defines power as the drive of everything living to realize itself with increasing intensity and extensity. Tillich defined love as the drive towards the unity of the separated. And that phrasing, the drive towards the unity of the separated, implies that there is an underlying unity. Working with these two drives is, in theory, is simple, but in practice is difficult and dangerous. And the reason it's difficult and dangerous is because, as everybody knows, power has two sides: a generative side, a side that can build things up, and a degenerative side, a side that can oppress and destroy. Love also has two sides: a generative side and a degenerative side, a side that can give life and a side that can constrain and limit. What is it that makes power degenerative rather than generative? It's the absence of love. And what is it that makes love degenerative rather than generative? It's the absence of power. It is precisely this collision of immoral power with powerless morality which constitutes the major crisis of our time. The basic point about this way of thinking about things is that choosing either power or love is always, always a mistake. When we choose either power or love, we get stuck. And if we want to get unstuck, if we want to be able to address complex social challenges, we have to find a way not to choose one or the other, but to choose both.